So today we're going to be talking about the end goal for reception and how we're going to help your child get there. And we'll also talk a little bit about, in light of the pandemic, kind of whether that changes things, whether there are things that you can be doing at home, and it will hopefully debunk a little bit some of that stuff that is we're kind of telling you to do. What is the purpose behind it? So the objectives for the session is to look at what my child is learning and when, how is my child learning it, and what does the pandemic mean for their progress. So the early years, what are they and why they are so important? The early years foundation stage, which is EYFS, you might hear teachers talk about it in that jargon, is the period of life from 0 to 5. So it covers everything from birth, everything they do at nursery up until 5 years old. So reception is the very top end of that. It's a hugely fundamental, important part of their development, and it's something that I have become quite evangelical about. Whenever anybody asks me about my job, it's something I'm very passionate about. And it was actually the Duchess of Cambridge, my team have probably heard this before, but it was the Duchess of Cambridge that taught me that brain development is the most rapid in the early years of life. So 90% of our adult brain develops to 90% of its adult size before the age of 5. So we need to get it right in those early stages if we're going to set them up properly for the rest of their lives. Children who receive assistance in their early years achieve more success at school generally. And as adults, they have higher employment, higher earnings. Generally, they have better health, lower levels of welfare dependence and crime rates than those who don't have the same early opportunities. So these foundation stages really, really do inform and help create the person that your child is going to be, which is why me and my team take our jobs extremely seriously, because you are giving us a very precious job to do. Somebody once said to me that school is the future within 4 walls, and I think actually early years classrooms are even more so that. So, we've got a few extra people joining us, which is quite exciting. So, what do children learn in the early years? The early learning goals, ELG, is fundamentally what we use in the classroom to inform everything. There are 17 early learning goals in total. That's that band across the top. We're starting there. The early learning goals are basically all of the different things that build up your child. So it's their personality, it's their attitude towards creativity, it's their ability to use their imagination, their physicality, their likes and dislikes, and we break them down in the early years into 17 areas, which at the end of reception we assess them in. So an early years teacher or an early years TA will always be thinking about the children that they teach in relation to these different things. The early learning goals, the ELGs, are broken down into 2 areas: the prime areas and the specific areas. The prime areas are the ones that are the foundation for the specific. The prime areas will be what they focus on during their reception time, and building those up. They do focus on some of the specifics, and those are important to be aware of, but we get a great foundation of prime, then we get a good we sprinkle the specifics on top. The specifics will be far easier for your child if those prime areas are strong. The prime areas are personal, social and emotional, and I will send these out, so please don't feel that you have to copy all this down. It's a lot of information, and I'm also going to go through each one individually, but it's personal, social and emotional, communication and language, and physical development. So all of those things about building up a small human being. We also then have the specific areas: literacy and maths, understanding the world. So that's like geography, history, observational skills, and expressive arts and design. At the end of your child's reception year, we will make an assessment on their progress in the prime areas, literacy and maths. So those are the ones that the government care about. Those are the ones that will be published by the school. We do make the assessment in understanding the world and expressive arts and design, but for some reason the government doesn't count those in their formal kind of presentation of data, which makes me sad because actually they're my favourite areas and I think are really important for a child. So don't worry, we do not forget them just because we don't release data on them. They inform absolutely everything that we do. The good level of development is our end goal, the GLD. The GLD means that your child is at the goal in the personal, social, and emotional, communication and language, physical development, literacy, and maths. They have to secure all of those areas in order to achieve the GLD. It's important at this stage for me to say that if your child does not achieve GLD, it does not mean that they are necessarily behind. It does not mean that they are any less. It does not mean that we need to be significantly worried about them. This just helps us to work out what their strengths are and where the areas that we need to work on. Although it's slightly complicated, the early learning goals are something that I love in terms of how we look at a child, because it thinks about the whole child. Once your child moves further up the school, we start to think of them in terms of English, maths, and science. And actually, there's far more to a child than that, and probably far more to them in terms of what stops them from achieving or what drives them and motivates them. So a great example is often children can be reluctant writers. If you get an English score for them, you just see writing. But in the early years, we think about, is it because they're lacking in self-confidence? Is it because they haven't got the physical skills? And it allows us to look at a more broad approach to your child, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm going to break each one down individually and just debunk some of it for you. Please bear in mind this is the end point. So we have a long way until we get there. Children make the most progress in the summer term. And this is just about, we're kind of halfway through the journey, even not a little bit before. So we're looking at this for June, not now. So I don't want you to be worrying that your child can't do all of these things yet. This is where we want them to be. Personal, social, and emotional development is broken down into 3 areas: self-regulation, managing self, and building relationships. It's a real focus on how they are feeling and being able to identify and talk about how they are feeling. The ability to be around and mix with other children and other adults, and also how they behave in new environments, how they behave in familiar environments, and whether they can manage and begin to manage some of themselves independently. Can they go to the toilet? Can they be away from a familiar adult? What's their response when things don't quite go their way? Can they take turns? Are they able to facilitate a conversation with somebody else? So each of these areas thinks about that emotional development of your child. We in school, there are some things that we do to support them. And I thought it'd be easier if I kind of identify the things that we do to get them to this end goal. As I say, I'll send these out so you'll be able to look at them in a bit more depth. But things like the star chart, modeling emotional reactions. I don't know if you've seen on the videos that I do for English, but often I will talk out loud what happens when I make a mistake. Oh goodness, it's okay. Mistakes help me to learn. And that ties into the fact we have mantras in the class, go-to things. Children don't know how to respond when things happen to them. We have to explicitly teach them. So it's okay. Mistakes help us to learn. Showing children that mistakes happen. It's often why you'll see me and Misty and Tula and some of the teaching assistants kind of be okay with the fact that we've made mistakes. We identify mistakes. We're not pretending that we're perfect people, because the world isn't perfect and the children will come across challenges. So us modelling out loud what happens when we do really supports them in this development area. Even just talking out loud about our thinking. Oh, I'm going to eat snack now because I am hungry. Or, oh, I haven't been to the toilet yet today. It's my break time. The first thing I'm going to do, swallows and swifts, before I chat to my friend is I'm going to go to the toilet. It might feel a bit like an overshare, but really what we're doing is helping the children identify the links. If you think about that film Inside Out, what we're doing is we're giving voices to all of those little people that are inside the head. We also give them explicit techniques for regulation, and these could be some things that are helpful at home too, but we have the timeout chair or the reflection chair that is a space that is theirs to take ownership of, and just have some breathing techniques. Do they need a glass of water? I can see that you are sad. Would you like a hug? I can see that you are angry. Take 2 minutes to calm down, and when you're ready, come to me. I can see that you're a bit wiggly. Do you need to do some star jumps? So making those connections from an early stage about how we can manage ourselves is really helpful. In the classroom, we use a visual timetable because children find waiting and the infinite expanse of a day very difficult to manage. So in breaking it down, we reduce anxiety and we help them to see what their day is going to look like. Partner work and group work is a perfect opportunity to create situations that are frustrating. It's okay for your child to be frustrated or upset as long as we're alongside them, supporting them in how to manage that situation. So often the teachers in a classroom will observe what is going on with children when they have a disagreement first before they intervene. We don't always want to give them the solution straight away. We want them to go through that slightly uncomfortable situation of what I do if somebody steals my pencil and how can I fix this myself before the adult comes in and gives the pencil. Circle time is great for expressing emotion and providing a safe space. Board games, again, simulate moments of frustration in quite a managed way. It helps children to take turns because it's very clear in a game of snakes and ladders when it's mum's turn, when it's dad's turn, when it's brother's turn, and when it's my turn. Within school, we also do a lot of reflecting. We end our day all of the time with how do I think my day has gone? Can I score it from 1 to 5? 1 being not great, 5 being the best day ever. I'm beginning to think about why that is. Now, some children might say, I've had a 5-day, and we know as grown-ups full well they've had a 3-day. So it's, or a 2-day, or even sometimes a 1-day. It's not about undermining their choice of a 5-day, but it's about helping them to see maybe some bits in their day that went really well, and which bits made my tummy feel funny, or which bits am I not proud of, or which bits could I do even better if? And this could be a really nice thing to introduce at bedtime. In school, we do it in line with kindness nominations, which is where the grown-ups, at the moment it's the grown-ups, nominate a child in the class who has demonstrated kindness. And we're going to start towards the end of the year, the children nominating each other so that they have to, within a day, identify moments of kindness and good choice. We also do something called a brain break, which your child might have spoken about. And if they haven't, I would thoroughly recommend you ask them to lead you in one. But we hit a chime and we do some breathing, and there are some words that we use just to calm them down. And we use that at certain points in the day just to break it up, to manage the flow from really stimulating lunchtime activity to learning. If we segment that and put in a brain break in the middle, it's a physical marker that we need to switch modes. So next up is communication and language. Communication and language is all about how your child engages. It's not just about speaking. It's very much about listening and understanding as well. It's those conversation skills and how they report on the world around them. It's very much linked with the personal and social emotional development. You'll discover that lots of these are interlinked together. But that's because in order to hold a good conversation, we need to have an appreciation of another person. The key thing here is that by the end of the year, your child needs to be able to listen in a variety of situations. So we're building them up slowly to partner work and group work, assembly, just being within the class, and then it will be assembly being within the whole school. Can they do speaking in front of the class yet? Can they express their ideas, but also can they tolerate when somebody else expresses their ideas? It's often the challenge here for them is asking questions. That's really hard. I don't know if you've noticed that when you might say to your child, have you got a question? They'll give you a statement. So we give them lots of prompts on who, what, where. It's why some of our activities within the work packs are based around interviews. It's why we often model who questions or what questions or how questions, and really emphasize that start word or that question word at the beginning. Who, what, and where questions are good to start off with, because how and why are more tricky. If you think about that, they've not always got definite answers, whereas a who and a what and a where can be really good for giving a definite yes, no. Story time is a great time to practice this with your child at home. The other tricky thing that children find in the area of communication and language is past, present, and future tenses and using these appropriately. That's really hard for a child, and is often why we have to be on our game in terms of language within the classroom, but also it's why when your child may say something incorrectly, we will model it back in the correct way. So, things that we do in the classroom, things that we've been setting in the work pack, and things that you guys could do at home to help develop this area. Hot seating is that idea of they have to embody a character, or it could be themselves, and they are interviewed, so they have to answer questions. The next development of that is them being the one to interview somebody else, so they could do that with their cuddly toys, they could do it with you. Within the pack, some of each week we've been kind of asking a get to know you question. The table talk is a great one for this. Finding out and modelling being curious with our language. Again, model asking questions. Do you do that explicitly? Are you aware of doing it explicitly or not? You could just be thinking out loud as you walk home. Or why is the bird sitting on that branch, do you think? Where is the blue car? Can you describe it to me? How was your day? Circle time is a chance for children to express themselves with language. Show and tell is more of a bold step forward for them. It's why we've started it now. Having to listen and wait my turn to show my thing that's really exciting, but also talk about it in a little bit more than 1 or 2 words. Story time is fundamental for language development, not only their speaking, but also exposure to vocabulary. And if there's one thing, if things with home learning are going all wrong, the one thing that will really help your child is reading. Reading to them. Pausing a story to think about the questions or a page in more depth. And teaching language explicitly when we do read a story. So I don't know if you've noticed that when I do read a story with the children, I'll often break it down far more than if you were just reading it, because I'm not assuming knowledge. I'm not assuming that they know what a rock pool is or a jungle or safari. We need to, as grown-ups, it's really easy to take for granted the vocabulary that your child has. So often what you'll find is that early years teachers, not only do we use actions for everything, we're very expressive, but also we kind of explain every word that we say. But it's just where I think it becomes a habit for us to do that because we do it so much with your children. Sentence starters can be really helpful for them in terms of developing that conversational skill. So if children can't speak in a full sentence, actually is something that we can do to help them is give them the start of that sentence. If I'm thinking about something from today, What's for lunch? Sausages. For lunch, it is sausages, or at lunchtime, I will eat sausages. I might say, or I want. I just give them the start, but expect them to use the full sentence. I reflect language back all the time in the correct form. It's not always successful when I'm a tired teacher, and we will get it wrong sometimes, but that's okay, because as we've just seen, mistakes help us to learn. But your child, classic one, I ran to the park. Oh, that's really great. You ran to the park. So we don't undermine them. We don't undo the effort that they've put in, but all of the time we're just correcting it, and we call it reflecting it back. A way that is really good to get this into your busy routines at home is to just ensure that at least once a week, if not once a day, there's a time where you as a family, or you and them, sit at the table whilst you're eating and discuss their day. You can, my family used to have to do one good thing from our day and one bad thing from our day. And I'm a talker, as many of you might have realised. And so my learning point was giving my sister the opportunity to speak. And I used to get so frustrated, but it was a really good lesson for me. And doing that round whilst you're eating, everybody's got to eat. So it's a way to kind of kill two birds with one stone. The third prime area is physical development. So physical development falls into two categories. Gross motor are those big skills, those kind of large hand motions, using their whole body to move themselves across a room or get up off the carpet, where fine motor is the small finger motions that we do. Gross motor is the precursor to the fine motor. And I did touch on this when we did the reading and writing workshop, so I won't go into it in a huge amount of detail, but just providing your child with opportunities to move is really important. Just checking their core strength, them sitting in star, can they get up off the floor, kind of without having to kind of roll over, push up. All of that kind of stuff. Coronavirus has been tricky for them because they haven't been able to get out as much. So just making sure that in your day, doing a daily walk, something like that, encouraging lots of running and jumping. The Joe Wicks and Miss White's yoga is why we have that every day, because if they haven't got the gross motor movements, the fine motor and the writing will be much more difficult. Fine motor is about holding their pencil and having accuracy when using small equipment. Fine motor is really hard for children, particularly boys. For whatever reason, they developmentally, often you'll find there's a trend where they struggle and come to it later. So it's about getting it into things that they enjoy. The government have recently introduced the idea that all children in reception have to know the tripod grip. It used to be encouraged, but now it's explicit. We do have some routines, and it's something that I will introduce further when we have the handwriting lives. But that is really key. Can they hold their pencil? There are developmental steps that I can share with you at another point as to how we get there. You as parents, I don't think need to worry about that as much. Let us worry about that. Just reminding them, oh, how do we hold our pencil? Oh, have you got your tripod grip? Because that will trigger all the routines that we're doing in school. I would say the most helpful things at home for gross motor are using actions to words. Can they, when we're retelling the story, can they do big movements? So for this week, crab. Can we be a crab? Can we be a blob? Can we be a brush maybe on the carpet? Movement breaks throughout the day, just dance. We have some that are on the school website. Cuckoo Kangaroo and Go Noodle are fantastic. As I say, Joe Wicks and yoga, but also setting up obstacle courses around your house, painting in chalk or drawing in chalk on the floor, and big painting. It depends how messy you want to get. But water on flagstones is a really easy way to do big movements without having to get too messy. For those of you that kind of get a bit funny about that, don't worry, I do, and it's my job every day, so you don't have to feel guilty about that. Fine motor, It's all about the exercise of the fingers. So I would really encourage you to send your child to Do Disco, 1 o'clock, Mondays to Thursdays, and we are going to dance with Play-Doh. It's a really fun way to build up finger strength. Any kind of dough work, if it's making pizza, kneading pizza, playing with Play-Doh at home, is all a really helpful way to develop your child's fine motor skills. When I say finger gym rhymes, that's things like Incy Wincy Spider. It's that small motion. So making sure they are doing the actions when we sing the nursery rhymes. Threading beads, Lego, cutting, drawing, making sure they're using their cutlery. I guess what I'm saying is if you feel like that's all your child can do in home learning, it's not a waste. These are all things that are supporting your child's development. So learning in the early years is not just about the writing and the maths. And it's often why in a maths activity, for example, Miss Tiantula might say to you, why not make something first? Because it's a motivation to get some fine motor skills into a maths lesson. We kind of embed as much as we can in all of it. So kind of we cover as many bases as we can. Literacy. I'm not going to go into huge depth here because we did cover it in the reading and writing workshop, and we could talk for hours about it. So I would encourage you, if this is something you want to know more about, to go back and watch that workshop, which is available on the school YouTube page. But literacy falls into comprehension, word reading, which is the phonics, and writing. Writing is the hardest thing for most children to do within the GLD profile. So across those 17 areas, writing is the hardest thing to motivate them in, for them to get right, because developmentally it's the thing that comes last. And all of those things that we've done in the prime areas feed into writing. So it's almost like that cherry on top of this cake that we're making in the EYFS. But things that you can do at home include that hot seating, developing vocabulary through exposing them to new words, wordplay. That's why I start all my English lessons trying to find a word that starts with the same sound as the day of the week. So you could play rhyming games, silly soup. I'm making lots of silly soup. I'm making soup that's silly. I'm gonna put it in the fridge to make it nice and chilly. And then I might put in something. Net goes in goes mice. And then your child has to come up with something that rhymes. If you say silly soup to your child, they should know the rhyme. But rice, dice, lice, and we can even have nonsense words. The words don't have to make sense when they rhyme. And again, letter formation we'll be covering in the live sessions, because there are particular ways that we want your child to develop their letter formation, because it will support them at a later stage in doing their joined up writing in year 2. Maths. Now, maths in the new ELG profiles is based around number and numerical patterns. You will notice that when you look at this in a bit more depth, maybe that shape, what we call shape, space and measure. So shape, space and measure is all of the language that your child uses to talk about distance, time, seasons, money, weight, shape, pattern. That has been taken out of the formal assessment. However, we still think it's a rich part of the curriculum and it's still really important. So we do cover them in the maths curriculum. It's just that there is an emphasis on number. I am really pleased about this. This is a new development, and I am really pleased about this because having taught reception and year 1, the things that often year 1 struggle with when we start to build up their maths in year 1 is not having a really solid foundation in numbers to 10. In order to do maths more successfully at a challenging level, we have to be able to manipulate numbers inside out. As a grown-up, you will take for granted your ability to do that because you probably don't remember being taught it. I don't. But it's something that as early years teachers, we have to focus a huge amount on. So it's that understanding that numbers, the number 5, The fiveness of 5. Can you break that down into 5 objects? Can you break that down into its number? Can you represent it in dots? Can you just look at 5 objects and tell me it's 5? Can you break it down into a part whole? So 2 and 3 make 5. If I said to you 4, how many different ways can you make 4? You would be able to quite rapidly recall 2 and 2, 3 and 1, 1 and 3, 4 and 0, 0 and 4. Your child needs to learn that. So actually, that's something that you can do really easily. Well, it will be a challenge, but that's something that you can do at home to support your child, because it is a challenge, and depth before breadth will support your child throughout their mathematical career. We get it right now, they'll be able to do it better in the future. If they can just whip those facts out, then they'll be able to do harder addition sums more quickly. They'll understand about digits in different places. They'll understand about ones, tens, and hundreds. And so what we do in reception might feel repetitive, and it could feel a little bit simple, but we get it right now, and they're going to be better at it in the future. Maths in the early years takes the form concrete, pictorial, and abstract. Concrete means, can they count objects? If I give them 5 objects and they point, do they count 5? Have they got one-to-one correspondence? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not 1 and then pick 2 objects as 1, 3, 5. Pictorial is the next stage. Rather than count objects, can they count pictures of objects? So rather than counting apples, can they count pictures of apples? Then we move on to pictorial abstract. Can they, no, then we move on to concrete abstract. Can they count cubes that represent the apples? And last of all, we move on to pictorial abstract. Can they count pictures of cubes that represent apples, if that makes sense? Then on top of that, we then tell them that this digit, so this numeral 5, also represents those 5 objects. That is why the repetition is so important, because we have to get them fluent in all of those different areas. Number blocks is the most fantastic thing ever invented by the BBC for mathematics. It is not a cheat for your child to be watching those and for you need to sit them in front of them for half an hour whilst you get the washing up done or the hoovering done, or whilst you just have a cup of tea, because it's excellent at reinforcing those values that we've just spoken about. Dominoes, board games, counting rhymes, counting just anything and everything will support your child in a really strong foundation. Understanding the world, if you remember back to that flowchart I had at the start, I said that understanding the world and expressive arts and designs are the 2 that are not formally recorded. However, I think they're some of the most important, because it's more the what of what we teach. It's the motivation for your child to develop all of the skills we've just looked at. We at Byron teach understanding the world through our curriculum. Understanding the world now looks like past and present, people, culture and communities, and the natural world. For some of you that are familiar with the EYFS and may have children further up the school, technology has been removed. So we don't need to gather formal evidence of your child using technology. However, we put it into everything that we do. And most of you will have discovered, I'm sure, in lockdown, if you don't know already, that children are better at using iPads than the grown-ups themselves. Their ability to unmute themselves on Zoom now is uncanny. So I don't think it's something that most of us need to worry about too much. But these are about the skills that the children will need for the non-core subjects further up the school. Historical kind of inquiry, geography, art, science. Ours is all based through vocabulary and exploration, physical play exploration, and speaking. Your child needs to be able to speak about these things in order to achieve a good level of development. So it's not just about showing us, it's about them telling us that they understand. I guess the thing that summarises the whole area of understanding the world is, can your child ask questions about the world around them, and can they spot similarities and differences in experience? For your information, this is how we do it at Byron. This is how all of the things that you'll be hearing about from your child fit in. So if we look at that area of past and present, the role model of the week exposes your child to the idea that there are other people out there. A child, when they come into reception, is quite I-focused. In terms of their development, it's not wrong, it's where they are at developmentally. Our job throughout the year is to get them to a we-focused approach to life. So the role model of the week gives them a real life example of our school values, something to aspire to, but also shows them that people are the same as us and people are different, whether that's in the present day or the past. The topic of All About Me, dinosaurs and space also allow us to do this in a really easy way. And it's the books, the curriculum is book rich, so in order to expose them to vocabulary and varying experiences. People, cultures and communities. Again, role model of the week is great for that. But also, again, All About Me. Our topic that we've just done on celebrations is key in terms of showing them religious and cultural difference. But animals also allows us a way in to show them life in different countries. If we had done the topic of animals in school, we might have spent more time looking at the places in Africa. We might have looked more at farming. We might have looked more at kind of the wider context of the different places that animals live. And finally, the natural world we cover in the topics that are coming up, because if we can talk about ourselves and we've got the skills to talk about ourselves, then hopefully we can begin to think about the world around us. So that's why we do these in the second half of reception. So animals, growth, dinosaurs and space are all coming up as great motivations for your child to make observations about the world around us. And space is my favourite topic for that, because some of their ideas about the universe are fantastic. They are wonderful. And it's why I think that grown-ups should take a leaf out of children's books, out of their children's books, if that makes sense. Because actually children haven't been told by the world that they can't ask questions. And some of their observations are just awesome. Finally, whew, we've made it. Expressive arts and designs. So this is your child's ability to be imaginative, which is why I think it's really important. For your child to have fun in their learning, they need to use their imaginations. And it's something that I am really big on in reception. We also need to be able to be creative. So that's creativity on their terms to start off with. Do they love building? Do they love writing, mark making, collaging, painting? But as the year goes on, we start to encourage them to explore something that might not be their safety net. So we start to think of activities that might be a little bit uncomfortable for them so that they can explore all creative outlets. Role playing is a huge part of this, which is why that's been in your packs, kind of the suggestion that you go on safari, the suggestion that you might open a pet shop, and we've seen some fantastic examples of it. It's lovely to see. But also singing lots of nursery rhymes. That's new this year, that's explicit, and those of you that came to my writing workshop will know that that's something that I'm passionate about. So I'm really pleased, and it's why we do huge amounts of singing in reception, because it enhances our vocabulary, it allows us to play with words, it exposes us to different experiences. And by the end of reception, not at this point yet, we need to be able to make a plan in our creativity. So we're not just going to be creative for the sake of it. We are going to be creative with purpose. So that goes back to that idea of talking out loud and showing children how we make connections in our brain so that then they can make those connections explicitly. Ways that we've been doing this whilst you've been at home, but also how we do in school: music time, calendar maths, singing lots of nursery rhymes, the different areas of our classroom. We have an art area, a role play area, a construction area, storytelling area, puppet shows. We've seen some great examples of those with Sharing a Shell. But then also that thing around reflection, thinking out loud, and being able to make a 3-step plan for our day. So that's the main bulk of it, but I just want to touch on briefly how a child learns in the early years. How do we take your child and teach them all of those things that we've just looked at? So within the early years, we think of 4 things. We think of the unique child, positive relationships, enabling environments, and thinking about children being learning in different ways. So just for 30 seconds, I want you to think about your child, or if you are a teacher here today, can you think about one specific child in the class that you teach? Think about your child and what makes them special and different to their friend. So if somebody was to say that about me, if somebody had asked my mum that, and actually my reception teacher did, because I still have the form that my reception teacher filled in about me. I found it a couple of years ago. My mum described me as creative. She described me as an introvert, but strong-willed. She described me as a talker, but shy with new adults. I'm somebody who likes routine, but I can cope when I go outside of it. I love stories and I'm driven by my imagination. Also, my favourite things include orangutans, talking about space, and drawing. So I wonder what you wrote about your child, but that was just a little bit of exposure to thinking about the fact that actually, if I asked that of Miss Charles or of Miss Tiantula or of the children in your class, they would be completely different. So we get to know your child inside out. We know lots of different things about them, and that we focus on that in the first 2 half terms. So we know them quite well by now. We use something, just for your information, called EXAT, which helps us to think about your child individually. That's what you've had parent sign-ups to. But it's called a development tracker. That's just teacher jargon for something that tracks your child's development in each of these areas in 6-month bands. So we think about your child from 0 to 5. Where are they at in their development? How are they doing on that journey to developing gross motor skills? How are they doing in self-regulation? Every child develops at a different rate. So what we are not doing is saying that just because a child is behind in their tracker, they are any less, because there is no line, there is no set path. And that's what I love about my job as a teacher, is I have to know where they're at individually. But that's why it can be a little bit dangerous to start comparing your child to another, because things will happen at a different rate. The other thing is, just to add another layer of complication, is that we've looked at the early learning goals. That says where your child needs to be by June. What if your child is born in August? Are they less able to get to kind of those things? What the government asks of August-born babies, for example, is that to achieve a good level of development, they are exceeding their rate of development by 3 months in all of the areas, which is almost an impossible task. So at school, we are really concerned with their age-related expectation. Are they developing at the rate of an average child of their age? And if not, how can we support them to be better? So that's why when you have conversations with your child's teacher, they will talk about EXAT rather than the development towards the ELG. It's our job to keep in mind both, but we're most concerned that they are on track for their age, because a September baby has 25% more life experience than an August baby. So we can't expect them to be writing at the same level at the same time. It's unfair. It's not fair to them. So that's just something to bear in mind, and often means why your teacher might not be worried. And I appreciate that as parents and carers, it is easy to look at children together and think, oh goodness, why is my child not doing that? But don't worry, we've got it in hand. Most of the time. No, we do. Another reason that, or another way that children learn in the early years is through positive relationships with their peers, with their parents and with their teachers. And we have this triangle of communication that we use. So that's things like us getting involved in World Book Day, dressing up. That's Pip and Finn's job. That's why they're sharing so much of life at the moment. We want you to be bought in to what we're doing, but also the children feeling able to feel safe and comfortable to share themselves with their teacher, but also their parents. It's why we value so much our communication with you, and most of the time trying to get that right. I know we don't always get it right, but thank you for bearing with us and for all of your feedback too. It's an honour and a privilege to have your child in our care, and we take it very seriously, which is why we value those positive relationships, because if that triangle has positive relationships, then your child will succeed and will achieve that good level of development more easily. The environment is a huge part of what we do. We have the indoor and the outdoor area, and we set the environments up, and I'm just going to go through these pictures. We set the environments up to encourage your child to learn through play. So this is a great example of how this is my writing area in my classroom. Everything is separated to encourage them to be tidy. That's about the personal, social, emotional development, understanding expectations of the classroom. There's writing in there and reading because there's labels. There's maths opportunities because you can just see creeping out under there. We shadow everything. We stick sticky back plastic in the different shapes. So I can talk to a child about shapes. So can you find the circle? How do I know it's a circle? Can you put 6 pencils in the pot? So our environment at school is a huge way in a huge part of how we teach your child. We call it our additional adult. It teaches your child for us, or as well, it's a part of it. We are very fortunate to have the park because that helps us to develop those natural world observations, gross motor, and that's a real priority for us at the moment. And finally, just something to be aware of. You don't need to know them inside out, but if you're ever looking at the EYFS and this might come up, it might have come up in your child's nursery. And at the end of the year, you'll receive a report on this and your child's progress towards the characteristics of effective learning. But this is how your child learns. Are they curious? Do they explore? Are they willing to make mistakes? So we put opportunities within our curriculum to ensure that they can do these things. I don't expect you as parents and carers to know and understand these inside out. I just pop them here at the end so that I'm trying to debunk some of the jargon that we might talk about. And as I say, you'll receive a report on these at the end of reception. So it's just good to know. But at Byron, we're very fortunate that our school values, our attitudes towards learning are very much shaped around these. So this is about teaching children about how to learn. So just before we finish, I wonder if anybody's got any questions, any thoughts that they'd like to share. If not, I'm always available to talk about this. As you've probably gathered, it's something I'm very passionate about. But we also have got the drop-in sessions whilst we're at home on homes teaching between 3:45 and 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'll send the link out in the daily seesaw. And I'm also, based on the parent survey, I'm going to produce some small top tip videos to help you in some of these areas a little more. So thank you for joining us. Those of you that were able to, thank you for my team for coming as well. And you're very welcome to leave and have a very good evening.
Thank you very much. And you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Gillies.
Thank you very much.
No problem.